Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jake, and today I want to present to you why you should subscribe to my channel. This is a presentation called Multi-Generational Wealth, Investment Questions from the Bitcoin Era. So these are some questions I wished I had asked myself. How do you get money? Well, in my case, I got a missed call. It's January the 1st, 2009, ring ring, mum calling. Oh, ignore that. I was hungover with my friends, messing around, just didn't want to chat to her, not the right time. Anyway, 2 or 3 missed calls. He's like, I better answer. Jake, there's been a terrible accident. You got to come home. Your dad's dead. It's like, fuck. Okay. And it was a day that, changed the trajectory of my life. And it turned out my father was a wealthy guy and I inherited money. And then you have a problem. It's like, okay, well, what the fuck do I do now? There is a whole field of different areas you can invest into and people you can work with, and what do you even do? Some other ways people tend to get money is through a divorce perhaps, or maybe a liquidity event in their business. Either way, you face the same problem. What do I do with my money? Now, in my case, it's like, so okay, I'm going to invest. Well, how do I do it? Well, you outsource the expertise. It's easy to find an investment manager. Go to someone you can trust. And even then, it's like, okay, what are the different asset classes? So in my case, I've invested into bonds and equities and currencies and commodities through regulated wealth managers that take their 1% fee and do a discretionary advised service to help you allocate across these different assets. There's also then physical real estate. And in my case, I also did some angel investing, so private equity, looking for early stage startups. I've had some good wins and I've had some horrible losses. The truth is, investing is really, really hard. Now, the big question for me was, well, what is long term? And I remember very specifically October of 2020, I came across a YouTube video titled Bitcoin Infiltrates Corporate America. And it was a guy called Michael Saylor talking about how he had just purchased over $200 million worth of Bitcoin for his company MicroStrategy. I was like, what is going on here? And in the interview, he described very specifically, it's like, how do I know 100 years from now that my company, the manager of the business, is going to have the best chance of survival? And long story short, he took his US dollars that he had in his treasury reserve asset and he bought Bitcoin. Whoa, stock listed business, team of lawyers, team of accountants. Why is it that this guy's been able to do this? And to my mind, this is the legitimization of Bitcoin from a wealth management perspective. High net wealth investors need to now pay attention. Now, for me personally, it's so difficult to understand what's going on out there. How do you decipher the noise, the signal? What's real, what's not? Fake news. People throw this around a lot. Now, a question I will always ask you to pose to your financial advisor or your financial team: has my purchasing power been retained over time? And the key here is that we're in a hyperinflationary environment in many currencies around the world, and the base currency of global trade, US dollars, are we in hyperinflation already? Perhaps not quite, but it's very, very possible. Another way to do this is to ask a man what he owns, not what he thinks. In my case, I've made a significant reallocation to Bitcoin. Rather than taking advice from people, dig in, say, what do you actually own in your portfolio, and find out from them. Equally, plagiarism, it's, you're not at school. Oh, don't copy that person. Okay. Well, look at other investors. Why did Michael Saylor do what he did? How did he do what he did? Well, the truth is, he still is a majority shareholder of his business. He controls the corporate governance of MicroStrategy. So lots of businesses will try and emulate him, but it's actually not so easy to do from a perspective of managing a business. Point being, and specifically as an angel investor, I understood that, or I learned that it's okay to copy. If you see an investor that you think has an investment edge, has good pedigree, has made interesting decisions in the past, you can copy them for your own benefit. Now, one of the cool things about this Bitcoin piece and it grabbing my attention in the way that it has, it's made me ask a fundamental question. What is money? And the funny thing here is I spent many, many years studying business through school and then going to do higher education and a business school, doing business management. And I was what I like to think of as highly trained in how to make money. But I never asked the fundamental question, what is money? And Bitcoin makes you do that. And whoa, is it interesting? You dig into the history of money. Okay, well, why did we even use money? And the problem of the double coincidence of wants, and the way that we evolve from a simple barter economy where I might swap my chicken for your orange. But there's a number of difficulties with that, and how we developed commodity money, and then how we developed debt. And what we have today is the fiat monetary system controlled by the Federal Reserve in the US. Now, what it's also taught me is that the free market dictates the money people use. And we've obviously used different types over time, but the best money holds six properties in a very, very close tie. So I can talk about that in more detail later, but things like fungibility and things like transportability, very, very important as characteristics of what makes a good money. Now, second to this, it's like, okay, you made your inheritance, or sorry, you received your inheritance, or you made your money from your business exit. Well, you have to invest, right? Why can't you just keep it as cash in the bank, i.e., save? Well, because of inflation, saving means you're guaranteed to lose purchasing power over time. So, okay, I'm going to take an investment and I'm going to grow my wealth. Well, what a great idea. The difficulty is investing is actually very hard. And the main reason is because you have to take risk. Now, whatever asset you may choose to purchase with your cash, be it an equity like Coca-Cola or Apple, or gilts, the UK government bond, or a classic car for that matter, you're looking for some similar things. Capital protection, i.e., you want to save purchasing power over time. Capital growth, you want to grow purchasing power over time. But the key is also risk. It's like, what risk are you taking? How much liquidity does the asset have? If you were to buy a house, for example, it's actually not very easy to sell. You have to find a buyer for that specific house. Point being, investing and saving are not the same thing, even though the status quo today would have you believe that buying an index linked fund of some form is just like a savings account. You're still taking on an investment, and you are still taking on counterparty risk. Bitcoin made me ask all these questions, and that is what's so interesting about this journey. Now, how did I react? I took my inheritance, and of the investable assets within that inheritance, I owned a lot of real estate, I owned some stocks, some bonds, and I sold the whole lot. And I've gone through a reallocation process. So the first step, why do you want Bitcoin in your portfolio? A huge amount of study I've done. I've run a podcast. I've tried to start a business in a number of different Bitcoin ideas. And the point is, I had to get very familiar with what Bitcoin is. And then you've got to figure out how you're going to do it. And the key here is Bitcoin is redefining what a property right actually is. And I would argue that having Bitcoin in self-custody is the best long-term, low-risk wealth management strategy that exists to mankind. Big call, I know. Subscribe to the channel and you'll find out more. Lastly, if you were to buy Bitcoin and you did have it just on your phone and you got hit by a bus tomorrow, what happens? What if it's all gone? That is a complete and utter failure of your inheritance protocol. So, alongside the self-custody, in terms of how to actually get your Bitcoin in there, I've also developed a way of having a good protection on the downside to my own mistakes and also nefarious actors coming and getting involved. This is not necessarily something I want to detail now, but the point is there is a whole new system for wealth management that I believe has a place in every family's portfolio. There's a number of things I wish I'd known. What the hell was I dealing with? I first bought Bitcoin in 2015. I sold some in 2016 to take my now wife on holiday. I sold some more in 2017 because of the Bitcoin Cash and the block size war discussion that was going on at the time. And then in 2018, when I got my Bitcoin Cash, I spent the whole lot on a classic car that was 40 years old, which I later sold for pounds. It was rusting, it leaked, it didn't work. The point is, I could have easily transferred that Bitcoin Cash into Bitcoin and held it to today. I didn't know the significance of what I was dealing with. A second point that's really cool is Austrian economics, completely and utterly devoid in my expensive and lengthy education in the business world. The understanding that actually economics is driven from human action, the individual. And in particular, it's their philosophy around scarcity that's so helpful to understand Bitcoin, because Bitcoin, said another way, is digital scarcity, a once in a lifetime phenomenon. And lastly, it's been hard because I didn't know who to trust. Who's out there? shilling all this different information. Which business is actually going to help me? Which person can I actually look to get proper guidance? That's what I hope I will become with this YouTube channel in the future. So, why should you subscribe? I've mentioned it already. Number one, why should you own Bitcoin in your portfolio? As high net wealth investors, you want to steward capital for the next generation. And you need to understand what you're buying, why you're buying it, how long you want to own it for, and how to own it. And so that's the second point. How do you adopt Bitcoin safely? Well, I'm going to teach you that. Should you follow along? DM me if you have any questions. There is a protocol to follow. What do you get out of this? Well, perhaps you're frustrated with the returns of the status quo. Like, oh, look, I haven't even, followed the MSCI this year, or that stock's outpaced me, but my actual portfolio is still not great. I haven't beaten inflation. Critical. And you feel like, oh, I want to get into this Bitcoin thing, but I don't know how to. I lack the expertise. Well, what I can do is help you sleep well at night with Bitcoin in your own self-custody. It's absolutely one of the biggest innovations, I believe, of my lifetime. And that is what I want to put my time into working on. So thank you so much for listening. Subscribe and always reach out if I can help.